new seasons starting off this fall. I'm going to, I promise not that this isn't a always I'll do this, but as of today, I'm going to try to get a little more casual. I'm going to try a few Sundays without the tie. I've been told it comes off a little stuffy, so we'll see whether this makes a difference. I am very grateful for you being here today. We're not always that grateful. In 1911, an ethical culture leader named Percival Shum, who served at the Ethical Society of St. Louis, thought he knew why we as a nation were not as thankful as he thought we should be or have been. He wrote back then that gratitude has declined among us as a nation chiefly because we are so prosperous, so sated with the world's goods. And I wonder if that's true. I wonder if he's right in saying that because we have so much, we have less gratitude. After all, in this country, we're taught to want to do better, get more, buy, right? Excess is so important to us that sometimes we act like ungrateful children, even as adults. Is there anybody in this room who, as an adult, has not acted like an ungrateful child at one point? Well done, well done. You know, that's possible. I can see that, actually. Get to know Marta, you'll see Marta. Now, some researchers have suggested that one of the reasons why people aren't grateful sometimes, and I put myself in that category, is that we are caught in what's called a scarcity mindset. A scarcity mindset. Other people who walk around with an abundance mindset are quite often more grateful, more optimistic. This abundance mindset focuses on what resources are available to your life. But people with a scarcity mindset tend to focus on what they don't have, on not having enough. They might hoard what they have because they don't know what they're going to have tomorrow, right? Audre Lorde writes, "We are more blind to what we have than to what we have not." In other words, we don't always appreciate all that we have, and we always focus on what we don't have. And I'm not proud that I feel that way more often than I'd like to. I try to nurture gratitude, I try to share what I have, but I really fall into the scarcity mindset when I'm talking about the resource of time. Being of a certain age, as is said, I begin to focus a little bit more on the draining hourglass of life. And on a mundane level, I tend to whine way too much on a day-to-day basis about being so busy, not having enough time to do X, Y, and Z. And it's kind of embarrassing after having a summer where I traveled and saw family and friends. And I'm deeply grateful for that time. But I nevertheless realize that I have this scarcity mindset some of the time. When I was a child, I think I was more openly grateful, as a natural way. Now, when I became a teen, I admit that I wasn't. I certainly regret having taken a lot for granted as a teenager, the roof over my head, the food that was on my table. I tended to take it for granted. I didn't thank people enough. I regret that. I didn't thank my parents enough, my teachers enough. And maybe it's just a part of human nature. I mean, after all, even Albert Schweitzer, the person who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his philosophy of reverence for life, who lived that philosophy through medical work in Africa, even Albert Schweitzer said, quote, "When I look back upon my early days, I am stirred by the thought of the number of people whom I have to thank for what they gave me or for what they were to me. At the same time, I'm haunted by an oppressive consciousness of the little gratitude I really showed to them while I was young. How many of them have said farewell to life without having made clear to them what it meant to me to receive from them so much kindness or so much care." We can't erase the times in life where we were not grateful enough, but we can work towards being more grateful in the future. And I admit that we have all in this room at least probably been given a lot in life. But we don't have to allow the fact that we have been given a lot to harden into a sense of entitlement or habits of selfishness. And the way out of this trap, I believe, is thankfulness. Professor Brene Brown reminds us that what separates privilege from entitlement is gratitude. Gratitude is a powerful thing. Now, very few people have been able to access the abundance mindset as much as Oprah Winfrey. I mean, she has become a star by promoting positive psychology and optimism. And I admit, it may be easier to have that attitude when you do live in abundance, which certainly she does. But many people less well off than Oprah Winfrey finds her approach inspiring and important to their lives. They find an emphasis on gratitude. Gratitude does help them. They believe her when she says, "Be thankful for what you have, you'll end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never have enough." So success in life, she preaches, comes to those who harness optimism and gratitude. Now, that way of thinking is markedly different than the way I was raised. I was told to be successful in life, you had to have willpower and self-control. Maybe growing up in New England is why I had that. Not optimism and gratitude. Resisting urges, delaying gratification was how to be successful. You know, penny saved, penny earned, and all of that. And a psychologist, Walter Mischel, 50 years ago, showed that there's a lot of truth in that, in something that he became famous for, known as the marshmallow test. Does anybody know what the marshmallow test is? Okay. This is a test where people brought in young children and put a marshmallow on a plate in front of them and said, "You can eat this now, or I'm going to leave, and when I come back, if you haven't eaten it, I'll give you a second." Very simple test. And what they found when they compared those who did resist eating the marshmallow and waited for the second one is they found out that those who ate it right away were different than those who resisted the temptation. Those who delayed gratification were generally more successful in life. They did better in school, they were socially more successful, they resisted peer pressure, they avoided addictions. So I think there's some truth to the fact that willpower is important. But recently, a neuroscientist by the name of David Steno has warned that there's a couple of things wrong with just willpower. One is a study of 300 teenagers in which they found that, quote, those who were better at using self-control had more success when it came to resisting temptations, but at a cost to their health. Their bodies suffered not only from increased stress responses, but also from premature aging of immune cells. Now, willpower hurts, is kind of what he's saying, which is curious. But you can see it hurting the children when they're sitting in front of that single marshmallow waiting, and they're like, they're really struggling not to take that. It's painful, their anxiety and their tension. And the second point of that is not just that willpower, just pure willpower and grit may not be healthy, but it's also less effective, Steno said. He said that in fact willpower comes and goes. That one minute you might be absolutely firm and declare to the world that you're going on that diet, and then when nobody's around you slip and you have that extra cake. So willpower is less effective than he said, than in fact having a gratitude mindset. And one of the reasons, he says, is that our minds tend to discount future rewards. We tend to focus on what's right in front of us. And this can lead people into credit card debt or substance abuse, where you grab what's there right now because you don't have gratitude for the bigger picture. So Steno claims that gratitude actually is more successful in helping you resist temptation and delay gratification. And this came clear to me when I was speaking to another ethnic culture leader, and they were on a diet, and they said they shifted from every time they saw food they couldn't have, from going, I'm not going to have it, I'm not going to have it. They shifted from that attitude to one where they said, oh, that smells delicious. And I remember the cake that I had a couple of years ago at Johnny's birthday party. That was delicious. And look at these people enjoying their cake. Shifting the attitude from what you didn't have to what you did have. It may not be easy, but it helped this person resist, and it helped the diet work. And interestingly enough, De Steno also saw that having gratitude can lead to other virtues, like living up to your obligations. He even found that you can grow more moral. He claimed that people are more ethical when they have a greater gratitude, that they cheat less if they're grateful. And the Roman philosopher Cicero knew this 2,000 years ago. He said, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others. That many virtues come out of gratitude. Now, this is something I think is very useful in parenting. A century ago, again, Percival Chubb, who I quoted earlier, ethical culture leader, emphasized that it's in the home where gratitude is truly developed. He said you begin with gratitude at home and work outward to all those, living or dead, who in their manifold ways have worked and striven to aid human growth and progress. So by starting at home, you broaden. Those of you who have heard me talk about the Coming of Age program at the Washington Ethical Society know how much gratitude is in the middle of that program. Teenagers are often portrayed as these hormone-hyped creatures who need discipline and guidance. And I think this comes out of the scarcity perspective. We tend to look at teenagers and think, quote, my teen doesn't commit enough to their academics, or they don't do enough around the house, or they don't listen enough to what I say. At the Coming of Age program with my children, we focused on how parents should model gratitude for their children. Specifically about being grateful and verbalizing that about what the teen does do. It may be small things, tiny things, like cleaning up their room after you nagged them 6 times. I appreciate how you did clean up your room. You can say that. And you can begin to see that, in fact, teens do so much in life. They navigate their busy schedules, they manage their changing bodies, they are learning to be independent. It's a tremendously challenging time of their life. And that's why it's important to center gratitude in relationships with teens. Every session of the Coming of Age program, what began the parent-child conversations were statements of appreciation, where the parent would say something they appreciate about their teen, and the teen would say something they appreciate about their parent. And this expression of gratitude, it felt a little superficial at first, but it became something that was very important to our relationships. And even now with my 3 adult children, gratitude is wrapped up in our love for each other. I don't think it would have been there had we not focused so. It becomes a habit when you do it. Being together, full of gratitude. Now, part of gratitude, I think, is about choice. Oprah Winfrey and Jean-Paul Sartre might agree, actually, for those philosophers here. It's about choice. Because I wonder if we stop thinking of gratitude as the result of receiving something, a favor or a gift or another day on this planet, that in fact it's not so much about reacting to something you receive, it's rather simply a choice. Jennifer Cohen, who is a writer for Forbes magazine, thinks that if we center gratitude, we will do great in life. She says in her article, Why Grateful People Always Succeed, she begins, I'd like to preface the idea that gratitude is a choice, not a result. I hear all the time that it's so easy to be grateful when you've made it to the top. It's easy to be grateful when your career, mission, and relationships and finances are all going exceptionally well. Yes, that is true, but contrary to popular belief, it's also to be grateful during times of struggle, during a building phase of life, where you're trying to improve in all sectors. In fact, she continues, gratitude is the key factor in achieving ultimate success and happiness. Now, I'm not convinced that being grateful is going to get you on the cover of Forbes magazine. But I do believe choosing gratitude can lead to a happier life. And ethical humanism is about a happy life, unlike some more punishing theistic religions that believe that suffering or self-denial are the center of ethics. In ethical humanism, to be ethical is to try to not just be helpful to others, but also to live a more fulfilling life yourself. One ethical culture leader, Ice Specker, who died about 10 years ago, in an article called Human Partnerships Are Solid Ground, said that we don't deny ourselves a good life, and we don't wait for it to be given to us from a higher power. We, in fact, choose to do so in relationships with other people. Spetter explains, we create life-giving purposes by enriching our human capacities now, in our giving now, in our caring now. The hopeful character of a humanist way of life turns out to be good for our physical as well as our emotional life. For it is breaking out of mere self-concern, defensiveness, so it activates a spirit of defiance and positive commitment. Chubb expressed similar sentiments. He wrote, gratitude is a form of joy, a high form of joy, because it is social in its reference. It is the outflow towards others of a generous gladness and fullness of a happy life. Gratitude has the therapeutic value of wholesome joy, a cleansing value. It helps to liberate, to purify, and intensify the sentiment of thankfulness so that it might irrigate the dry soil of our lives to new fruitfulness of beneficent actions. Now, it's easier, I think, to be grateful when you focus on the things outside of ourselves that we can be grateful for. This very present moment is something we can always be grateful for. That's at the heart of a lot of mindfulness practices. To breathe in saying, I am grateful for this moment as I breathe in. I am grateful for this moment as I breathe out. The natural world we can be grateful for, also at the center of a lot of Buddhist practices. Thich Nhat Hanh has a wonderful phrase in offering us a chance to be grateful. He says, walk as if you were kissing the earth with your feet. Religious humanism shares this emphasis of appreciation for nature. The natural world and our immersion in it creates wonder, and it's a source of gratitude every day. My mentor, Joe Schumann, emphasizes the gratitude he feels from just contemplating the cosmos. He says, this sense of limitation before an infinite universe generates not only a sense of humility, but as with the nature mystic, a sense of wonder, indeed reverence for the very fact of existence, and gratitude for even our limited ability to discern a parcel of the tapestry of reality. We can, of course, feel grateful for what we have and what we own. We're even encouraged to have gratitude with the things we get rid of. Anybody here a follower of Marie Kondo? The declutterer says that you should surround yourself with things that spark joy, so that you're always grateful for what you have. And even what you give away, you hold in your hands for a moment, and you remember being grateful for how this item served you at one point in your life before you put it in the box for charitable contributions. Now, in ethical humanism, we focus most on deeds, on what we do, on people, our interactions with them. And the simple act of opening the door for somebody whose hands are full can make a big difference in life. Most of all, being thankful for others, particularly those we are around all the time, is so fundamental. It's so easy to take people close to us for granted. In the Coming of Age program, we emphasize the importance of strong relationships. With care and attention, relationships can grow rather than wither. Robert Edmonds, who wrote a book called The Little Book of Gratitude, sees gratitude, quote, as a relationship-strengthening emotion because it requires us to see how we've been supported and affirmed by other people. And little does more for others and for oneself as does nurturing these positive relationships of gratitude. Now, as I head towards my conclusion, what do we do to feel grateful? This summer I drove on my own up to the St. Lawrence River, as I do many summers, and along the way I stopped at 2 or 3 homes on the way up and 2 or 3 homes on the way down to stay a night with a friend from college or a childhood friend. And like I always do, I thank them for having me while I'm there. I thank them when I leave. I send them an email. But this summer, in thinking more about gratitude, I did something that my mother forced on me. I wrote thank you notes. I got actual envelopes and papers and a stamp and wrote out in cursive what I was grateful for in my stay there, so that I could dwell on gratitude longer. In Marriage with a Heart, a book written by Lois Kellerman, an ethical culture leader who I had lunch with this last week, she talks about how she was taught to be thankful. She said, my parents, both writers, would never let me get away with just any old letters. They always made me write thank you notes from the heart. Thank you notes that really was about being thankful. Now, as a kid, I sometimes felt it hard to write thank you notes. I didn't really like that bunny slippers that Aunt Clara sent me. If you want me to lie to her, is that what you want? You want me to be fake? That's what I said. My mother did not buy that argument. And I'm glad she didn't, because it nurtured in me this sense of gratitude that I think makes it easier for me to be thankful today. Alice Walker, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, as you know, expressed it this way. She said, thank you is the best prayer anyone could say. I say it a lot. Thank you expresses extreme gratitude, humility, understanding. And maybe it's easy to think that just a thank you is mundane and trivial, but I don't think it is, because it can be a seed for gratitude. It can develop a trait rather than a one-off experience. It requires repetition. Emerson told his followers that they want to find contentment, they should, quote, cultivate the habit of being grateful for every good thing that comes to you and to give thanks continuously. And I think doing so increases a general disposition towards the world that comes almost naturally. So I have one ask in this talk, one ask of you. I ask you to focus on what it is in your life that you can do to nurture this sense of gratitude for your own sake and for the sake of others. Some of you already do this. There's something called a gratitude journal, right? You put a little book next to your bedside table, and before you go to sleep or when you wake up, you write 3 things that you're grateful for. 60 seconds. You can do gratitude visits. Think of somebody, perhaps somebody who can't leave their home due to illness or infirmity, that you feel thankful for, and make a visit and tell them what they meant to you. Pick up the phone. Simply say it to some service personnel around us that are often, they're just invisible to us. But make the thank genuine and look them in the eye. And these habits can do for you what author Faith Baldwin said it did for her. She said, I learned over a period of time to be almost unconsciously grateful as a child, a young child, before they become a teen. As a child is grateful for a sunny day, blue water, flowers in a vase, a tree turning red. I have learned, she writes, to be glad at dawn and when the sky is dark. Only children and a few spiritually evolved people are born to feel gratitude as naturally as they breathe, without even thinking. Most of us come to it step by step, painful step, to discover that gratitude is a form of acceptance. Most of all, gratitude is best lived in our actions. Maybe sitting alone and meditating on gratitude is useful, but I think its chief value, especially if you embrace the values of ethical humanism, the chief expression of gratitude in our life is in our actions, how we treat others. In communities that really believe in deed before creed, gratitude has to lead to a change of behavior. John Kennedy said, "As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them." I am deeply grateful for you being here, and I hope I will show that to you in my service to this community. Thank you.